Welcome to yet another exciting edition of Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. This weekend promises to be very thrilling because we'll take a look at what has happened in 2024, highlights and maybe, if I say, some weaknesses we found in 2024, and then take a peep into 2025, what to expect. Can we get better than what we have been in 2024 in the world of sports? When we return from the break, I have a very important guest with me in the studio, and of course he will throw more light, very informed guest, I must say, that will throw more light into what 2024 has been in sports for Nigeria and what to expect in the year 2025. Stay there, and we'll be right back after a very short break.
Every day, our lives are changed by history.
We are one people.
Welcome back, Sports Extraordinary here on Atlantic Television Network, and I tell you again, we're taking a preview of what to expect 2025 and a review of what has happened in 2024. With me to do that in the studio is a very big fish. Yes, I can say he's a very big fish because if I begin to reel out what our guest this hour has been, we will not leave the studio. We'll spend more time looking at his past in the world of sports. But Colin Udo is a well-known face on television and across the world. Yes, I must say that. He's been around Nigeria for a while, and now he's moved over to the United States of America. Colin, like I said, is this, that, but presently based in the United States of America. He writes for ESPN in the United States of America. You can find him on every sports arena you can think of. Is it boxing, football, anywhere in the world. He's been a veteran of going to several World Cups. Colin, nice to have you in the studio.
Thank you very much, sir.
Well, Colin, this is 2025, a few days into 2025. We'll take a first look at what has happened in 2024. For me, here in Nigeria, the biggest highlight is the re-scrapping of the Ministry of Sports and Sports Development, and of course, reintroduction of the National Sports Commission under the leadership of Shehu Diko, led by Olakpade as well as the Director General. This means that the implementations of the provisions of the Decree 101 are completely in place now, and he's talked about a sports economy that will span from the grassroots, all the way to the local government to the state, to the senatorial zone, and to the national. And thereafter, we have what he calls a derived sports economy. And to drive this sports economy, the National Sports Commission has been granted a budget of nearly 95 billion naira. It's never been that rosy for Nigeria. This is an increase of 200 and in fact 300% increase from what we saw in 2024. So the budget for for the National Sports Commission is big in itself. Of this budget, a whopping 78%, 78 billion will be used for, to run the sports itself in terms of infrastructure, attending competitions and all of that. So for me, the highlight for 2024 is, like I said, the scrapping of the sports ministry and the reintroduction of the National Sports Commission that will drive the sports economy, in their own words, into the future. What is your impression of 2024 in sports for Nigeria, and do you think there is a way out as we move towards 2025?
Well, I think that the first thing we've got to consider is, was 2024 a successful year for Nigeria in sports? In an Olympic, who was world champion, world record holder, everything, went to Olympic Games, didn't quite perform well. So when you look at it in that respect, you've got to say 2024 as an Olympic year wasn't a good year for Nigerian sports. And I guess that is also what sparked the dissolution of the sports ministry and the creation of the National Sports Commission. I've got to give some credit to the past minister, John Owan-Eno. He came in for a short time, tried to make some changes. Unfortunately, he was hamstrung by a lot of the things that, sort of hold back sports in Nigeria. But the good thing is about the National Sports Commission, the changes now, it's not just the change in nomenclature. It's about the people who have been put there. Now, you have Bukola Olopade, who's Director General. He's steeped in sport. He's been sports commissioner in Ogun State. When he left that job, he created his own sports management company and has been running sports as a business for, I think, the last 10, 15 years. So that's somebody who has made a career out of, running sports as a business. And then you look at Shehu Diko, and I must mention, for those who don't know Bukola Olopade, if you have any marathon in Nigeria, it's run by Nilayo Sports Management, and Nilayo Sports Management is Bukola Olopade. Coming to Shehu Diko, we know Shehu Diko's antecedents. He's been a sports business entrepreneur for years and years. He was the man who brought Manchester United and Portsmouth to Nigeria to play a friendly match. He's been head of the NPFL, the LMC, and he's also been the NFF vice president. So these are people who are have been steeped in sports all their lives. And like I told someone the other day, it's a new guard in the sense that you're having people who understand sports, who know sports, who live and breathe sports, trying to now come to run it at the very top. And if these two gentlemen don't succeed, then sports in Nigeria is doomed.
Well, let's hope that Shehu Diko and Olopade will ensure that sports in Nigeria gets to an Eldorado state, because in the past we've had to struggle. In the past 66 years or thereabout, we've been struggling. In all of it, like you mentioned, the barometer is the Olympics, and I'm not too sure in the last two Olympic Games we've had any remarkable success as we expected. And like you mentioned, they could be the reason why the sports ministry has been scrapped. At the world level, especially in athletics, we'll talk about World Championship. We've had only one, of course, only one, and that's not too good for us after 66 years in sports. We really need to have to. In terms of population and the interest, we are into several sports disciplines, over 50 sports disciplines, and we should be able to produce athletes and sportsmen and women that can throw it up. But we have been told the National Sports Commission will have to do that in just a few more years. Let's look at it, Colin. Let's break it down now to how this National Sports Commission will perform. Budget, they've had an increased budget of over 300%, nearly 95 billion. No such amount of money has ever been given or injected into sports in the past. Is this enough? And can it turn around our sports in the next few years?
Well, I mean, you can never say it's enough, because right now the work that needs to be done in Nigerian sports in terms of developing facilities, building capacity with trainers, coaches, and then also, getting athletes, getting training grants and competing is a lot. It's a lot of money. But I believe, look, I'm thrilled about the fact that, the Sports Commission has a budget that's 300% more than the sports ministry used to get. And let's understand something. the sports ministry in the past was the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And so the budget they used to have was combined with the youth and the sports ministry. And the largest chunk of that budget did not even go to the sports side. It went to the youth development side, the NYSC. That was where almost 60–70% of that budget went into. So the sports ministry itself was left with only a very small chunk to execute whatever programs were needed. Now we have the National Sports Commission, different from the Sports Ministry, which has a 300% increase in budget, which, if you look at it, might even be as high as 400–500%, because when you take out that Ministry of youth part, you take out that huge chunk of budget that we're eating up, then you now know that the sports itself now has a higher percentage in terms of allocation. So, and I think we're seeing a good start to how they want to put these funds to use. I think Bukola Lokpade was saying the other day that they have training grants. So they've graded the athletes into different tiers, 1, 2, 3, I think 1 to 3 tiers, if I'm not mistaken. And for each tier of athlete, you get a certain amount in training grant. Now, if the lower tier athlete begins to perform well, you move up in your category, and then you get more money for your training grants. And then if you're on top there and your performance drops, then you drop down. So that's, in many ways, that's both a motivation, you know, for athletes to do well, and also if you drop for any means, you also
want to taking over, you know, from the established stars that have been there, both in the male and the female. What can we do? Because this Sports Commission now told us that they are going to look at grassroots sports development. They are going to organize competition from the local government level and graduate up to national from the senatorial district. And what can be done, you know, at the grassroots level to stimulate, you know, the culture of having stars, you know, being replaced, like you mentioned, you know, from grade A to from maybe C to B, B to and to A.
I think that's a great first step, and I believe we discussed this recently. You need to have a constantly moving conveyor belt of talent, you know, that comes through all the time, all the way from the very bottom to the top. When you don't have that, then all you have is a scattergun approach. For instance, a lot of the athletes that we have now that are competing for us are products of, I'm talking about athletics, are products of the Making of Champions. And Making of Champions started this program, I think, almost 15 years ago. I remember when Bambo, who runs it, came back from the US and decided to start the Making of Champions. And so they come in, they train these athletes, and then they help them get scholarships to US schools, like we're doing with football now with the Mercy Akide Foundation. So a lot of these athletes that have gone there came through that Making of Champions program. Now, if you take that and sort of, you know, escalate it, scale it to a wider level led by the sports ministry, then you have a wider net to pick up talent, like you said, from the grassroots, local governments, senatorial district, state level, national level. We're a country of over 200 million people or more. I mean, I don't know what the figures are right now. So there's no way, if you have a structured organizational planning that starts at the grassroots level and you have competitions, that you will not pick out the best. And these competitions need to be incentivized. So whether it's at school level, or I mean, school level is always the best, because then you can catch them that way. But even in other levels, you can still, you know, create nets that can drag these talents in. And so when you create that motivation, when you win, instead of giving out these cash prizes like we're used to doing, build that community. Put in money to build more facilities so that more people can train, and then give them a pathway towards a real professional competition.
Yes, you mentioned the Mercy Akide Foundation. A few days ago, she was in the studio here. By the way, Colin Udo is the husband to Mercy Akide Udo, the 3-time African Women Championship winner in Africa here, and of course, a FIFA ambassador as well. Colin, Mercy was here. She talked about her foundation aimed at discovering young female players that could be taken outside of the country, honed their skills, honed and returned. Let's marry it to the Super Falcons of Nigeria, where she dominated over a period of time. After her era, we haven't seen dominance, you know, on the part of, you know, the female national team. And for me, it's traceable to the lack of replacement of these stars. After the Nkirus, the Messis left, we've had to struggle to maintain second place. Not even if we were, first place winners for a long time. Now we've had South Africa as the, leader of women in African football. Has it anything to do with the level of competition in Nigeria, or maybe administration?
Well, I think it's probably that conversation is a bit more nuanced than that. And again, it comes back to the grassroots level. When we dominated Africa, we had about the only, in fact, Nigeria had the first professional women's league in the world, because even the US league started, I think, in 99, 2000, about 99 years. That's when the WUSA league was the first professional women's league in the world at the time. At the time, that's when it started. But before then, the Nigerian league was already professional. So we had actually the first women's professional league in the world. Everybody else was doing. I remember back in those days, the European countries only had amateur leagues. In fact, it was only recently that the European countries have now turned into professional leagues. So we had our players playing professionally here, just like the men, side by side with the men, on a weekly basis. And so we are a step above other countries, especially in Africa. That's why we're dominating so much. Now, the problem was that we have almost remained at that level, where our league has not our women's league has not grown to the point where you can say, okay, let us improve beyond the level where we are. We're still at that same level where we were maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago. Now, in that same time, you've seen other countries coming, like South Africa, their leagues have developed. Morocco have developed their leagues. Ghana have developed their league. And then players are also going out to the US and Europe and elsewhere to play. And so they've caught up with us, because we have been, we're not even standing still, we're moving back. So now everybody's at a level playing field. The only slight difference we have over, or advantage I might call it, over the others, because one, we have a lot of players, and that is a lot of talent, moves to a lot of talent. At the same time, we still carry that legacy of being, African champions. So we use that almost as a stick to beat others with. But, when you don't prepare as much as you should, and don't get the kind of preparation that you need to sort of stay above that level, that's how we lost to Morocco and lost to Zambia at the last Women's Africa Cup of Nations. So we need to actually create this pathway, like I'm talking about, of identifying the talents very early. Some of them are raw, they know that, okay, these ones have a future potential, and they are the ones that you think and look at and say, okay, these ones can do well immediately.
But talking about the Messi Akide Foundation, do you have any kind of collaboration? Because Messi, former captain of the Super Falcons, like I mentioned, FIFA ambassador, she has that pedigree in the female football in the world. Does she have any collaboration with the, let's say, the National Sports Commission, by extension now, the Nigerian Football Federation, aim at helping them, throw up these players that could replace the ones that are there now?
Well, not at the moment. I mean, we're talking to everybody. The Sports Commission, I know I spoke to Shehu Diko. Hopefully, if everything goes well, we should have a sit down with him next week. The NFF, we've had conversations, and just let them know that this is what we're doing. We've also been in touch with the state government here in Rivers State, so hopefully, if everything goes well, we should also have some great conversations going with them. So something like this is not something that one person can handle. It takes partnerships and collaborations, because at the end of the day.
Colin, now let's look at basketball. Basketball used to be an area where Nigeria was having near dominance in Africa, but that looks like fading away over decades of administration, which now we hope is being resolved. What are our chances now? D Tigers and D Tigers don't seem to be having that formidable nature we used to know of them. There have been an admixture of players coming from the established leagues across Europe and America. What would be responsible for our state now, and what can we expect in 2025 in basketball from Nigeria?
Basketball is a complicated situation. The thing is, with basketball, you have sort of like something simmering under the surface that hasn't quite bubbled up. Well, it did bubble up at some point, and then so it was resolved, not completely, in quotes, and then went back under the surface. So it's still simmering there. So it's kind of difficult, really, you know, with basketball to look ahead when you look at all the issues. They have got funding issues, they've got people on the outside fighting those on the inside, and then, you know, you've got a lot of things that are going on there. With that said, I think in many ways, you've got to give some credit to the leadership of the NBBF, because despite all of the issues, they've at least tried to get stuff done. The women qualified for the World Cup 2 years ago. Unfortunately, the sports minister at the time decided to take matters into his hands and pull them out of the World Cup and cost those girls a chance to go represent the country, because he was, whether he was ill-advised or he acted on his own, that's a question for another day. But we saw them at the Olympic Games. They were drawn in a very tough group, and they came out, you know, they showed themselves, and they made the country proud. Even though they were missing some really good players. And on the back of those performances, one of the girls actually got an WNBA 10-day contract, and then from there she moved to China. So basketball has the potential to be an outstanding sport for Nigeria. Unfortunately, it's not being tapped into properly. I mean, if you look at the NBA, the number of Nigerians, you know, in the NBA alone we can form like multiple teams and combined with the ones who are in Nigeria and in Europe. Unfortunately, we don't have that, and let's hope that Rivers Hoopers, who are going to the Basketball Africa League, will also shoot for at least, I mean, last time they went there, they got a bronze medal, so let's hope this time they can go for gold. So, I mean, I'm confident in the basketball talent we have. I just hope that, you know, they can find a way to get rid of all of this infighting, whether openly or privately, and just think about basketball and move basketball forward.
You talked about the basketball league, Colin. In the past, we've seen 4 different editions of the basketball league. This year, 2025, we will host. We'll see. I think South Africa, Pretoria, you know, having a chunk of the basketball league 5th edition. 4 different teams from 3 different African countries has won this basketball league in Africa. Nigeria is yet to do it. And if you look at the pedigree of Nigeria in basketball, you would think that Nigeria should be, at least a Nigerian basketball team, should be amongst those who have won the basketball league in Africa. Rivers Hoopers will be going in there. Do we have a chance of at least being the 5th winner of the basketball league in Africa?
Oh, given our pedigree? Yeah, there's a good chance. I mean, if you look, I think Rivers Hoopers is one of the best run sports teams in Nigeria. Right. They're one of the best run sports teams in Nigeria. From the general manager all the way down. I mean, okay, let me even go all the way. I mean, the governor, they've got great support from the River State governor. The commissioner of sports is almost always there with them, and they've got the GM and the coach that, you know, have been together for like forever, and understand each other and work together very well. So, if, like I said, to name one of the best run teams in sports teams in Nigeria, not just basketball team. So I think they've been kind of unfortunate in the sense that they've been sort of hampered by problems that are not of their own doing. You know, this should be their 3rd outing at the Basketball Africa League. Is it the 3rd or 4th?
They were 3rd.
This will be their 3rd, yeah, because
they were in the 1st. They couldn't make the 2nd because of no fault of theirs.
Yeah. And then and then they lost to Customs on the other. Yeah, then they won bronze. So this is their 3rd outing. Now, all of these things, the reason why they haven't been able to go as far as they should is because of the issues they have at home. For it, they didn't have enough. I mean, the first one when they qualified, they barely had a few matches to play to become champions. You know, they didn't have enough time to prepare to play against top opposition before they got there. And then the second one narrowly lost. So when you put all of these things together, you know, you've got to look at it. If you have a great league at home that is running constantly, and then you're able to now marry that with great preparation ahead of the tournament, and then you can get your players and keep them together, then you're able to go out there and perform very well. Unfortunately, because of all of the issues that go on here, it's hard for them to do that. But in fairness, that's why I said that they are one of the best run, if not the best run sports team in the country. You know, from the beginning of the year, Rivers Hoopers, even when there was no league involved, they kept their players, they were paying them salaries, they were training, they took part in the Louis Elliott competition, played in, I think, another friendly tournament, and then they went ahead and sort of destroyed the Nigerian league during the regular season and the playoffs. So once they can start prepping early enough again with a mindset focused on the Basketball Africa League, I believe that they can go there and do better than the bronze medal they got last time.
Well, we'll just take one more look at sports in the year 2024 and what you should expect in 2025. Let's look at the boxing discipline, Colin. In the past, especially in 2024, I can't really remember a boxing tournament that is of note here in Nigeria. But if you take a look in the last couple of decades, Nigeria has often thrown up heavyweight boxers, even at the Olympic Games, that have made a reasonable mark up to the, I think, quarterfinal stage. But I don't seem to remember any boxing event that has thrown up a champion here in Nigeria. What's happening to boxing in Nigeria, and can we get any better in the year 2025?
I mean, it's the same thing that's happened to almost every sport in Nigeria. Just, being able to get the funding, get the partnership, the collaboration, the sponsorships that would help to organize tournaments. We used to have a lot of boxing promotions, back in the day in Nigeria. The last one I remember was the Go TV boxing night that was, I think it was Flight Time Promotions was organizing in Lagos. I don't think they've done anyone since then. So, I mean, it's hard to get talent when there's no pathway for that talent to compete at a high level. In the past, we had our boxing promotions, so that's why you had a lot of Bishan Wangpa and Jerry Okoro,
Tiger and rest.
Come up exactly because you train and then you go for these national tournaments, promotions, you fight, and then from there you go. Now we don't have that anymore. The Go TV boxing night is done. It doesn't happen anymore. So now the only boxers we have that we can say is probably Ifeanyi Jagba, and he came from there, went to the US, he's fighting there, so I think now he's a contender for one of the world boxing belts. So let's hope that he gets it, and maybe that might help to spark a boxing revival in Nigeria.
Well, you talked about the Ifeanyi Jagba, of course, we know is no longer Nigerian per se. There is the Anthony Joshua. A lot of people, has traced his route to Nigeria, which he believes is a Nigerian at this point. Yes, but with British passport as well. Only a few days ago, he came into the country for holiday, and within this first period, of course, he's coming off a difficult 2024. And do you think he can make it in 2025? Because he's lost consecutively now, and he has a fight, though on the cards, against Debo. That will be in February this year. Can he, resurrect, in my own words, his boxing career from there?
Look, Anthony Joshua is a fighter. And when I say a fighter, I don't just mean with his hands. I mean also mentally. He's not going to give up. He's not the greatest boxer ever. But the thing about AJ is that he's got spirit, he's got heart, and he's somebody who learns from his mistakes. We've seen that multiple times, when he's lost a fight, he's come back. I think the one man who has outclassed him is the current champion, Alexander Usyk, who, beat him comprehensively twice. Otherwise, we've got to look at Anthony Joshua. One, he's a late starter in boxing, and he moved up fast and became a world champion. So I guess now he's learning a lot of the lessons that he should have learned earlier before he became a world champion, and he's picking up from there. I think he was unfortunate in that Dubois fight. He probably went in too confident and then left holes that saw him get clipped badly. I think that he's going to go into the rematch a much better fighter, and so in many ways I think that 2025 will be a better year for him. Especially if he wins that fight against Dubois. And I was really happy to see him come back home to Abeokuta, to Lagos, to Ogun State, because I remember his first title fight. I actually covered it back at the time for Kwese TV, and actually went to Abeokuta, to Shagamu, to his family home, spoke to people, his uncles, his relatives, and we watched that night, and the excitement that the people of that community had to see Anthony Joshua win was, was mind-blowing. So I like the fact that he's retracing his steps and sort of like engaging with his community back home in Nigeria. You see that he has a map of Africa on his arm, with Nigeria also. So he knows his roots, he's connected to his roots, and whatever anybody says, we'll claim, whether win, lose, whatever it is, we'll still claim Anthony Joshua as Nigeria. Of course, we know he grew up in the UK, but let's not forget that he also went to school here at Mayflower school, Taishala University School, Mayflower in what's that town called again in near Shagamu. So he was born in the UK, raised in the UK, but also raised in Nigeria. So he's both UK and Nigeria.
Well, that will be it for this half of the show. We'll take a break now. When we return from a break, we'll take a look at more, especially in football. Can the Super Falcons of Nigeria, the Super Eagles of Nigeria, the Chan Eagles are expected to be in action any moment from now as well, in a bid to see whether they can win the African Championship amongst 18 other countries that will participate in the tournament. Across, we'll go to Europe as well. Manchester City has gone through what you look at the calamitous season so far. Can they survive? Manchester United seem to be struggling as well. They've never been into that lower rung of the league in over 2 to 3 decades. But now we are finding Manchester United struggling in the lower half of the Premier League in England. Colin is a follower of Premier League football as well. He will tell us his thoughts about that. So a lot more to come. Stay there and we'll take a short break. We'll return back to you with more exciting sporting stories. Welcome back. It's Sports Extraordinary Weekend Edition here on Atlantic Television Network. This weekend is a special weekend after the festivities of Christmas and New Year. We have with us in the studio Colin Udo, who is actually holidaying in Nigeria. He's based in the United States of America. Like I said, he's an international sports journalist who writes for ESPN in the United States of America. Colin, nice to have you. And let's take a look at football now. A year 2025 promises to be a year for me of seeking our status in African football. In July this year, in Morocco, we will find the African Women Nations Cup competition taking place, and South Africa right now are defending champions. The likes of Morocco, Nigeria, who have been powerhouses in women football, will be there as well. What chances do the Super Falcons have in 2025 to make amends from what we've seen of them in the last 3 or 4 years?
I think we have a great chance. The NFL just needs to decide, Right now, since Randy Waldrum left, they've talked about getting a foreign coach and named Justin Madugu as interim coach. Now, I know the NFL doesn't have money, so trying to talk about hiring a foreign coach, there are 2 ways to do it. It's either you hire the coach immediately and let him get to work on beginning preps for this tournament, or you name Justin the coach and let him continue working, because now Justin has handled, I think, 2 friendly matches, if I'm not mistaken, with the Super Falcons since Randy left, and he hasn't done badly. So if you want to make a decision, because what normally kills us is the indecision. You know, on the one hand, you're saying, oh, we're going to get a coach here, so you act as interim. So the man who's acting as the coach doesn't know if he's going to be there when the main event kicks off or not. And so he's just like, it's patchwork. And then maybe if you now decide, maybe he gets one bad result, you now decide you want to bring somebody in, that person comes in with, you know, a few weeks to the tournament and then tries to change everything around. So I think my thing would be to say, look, NFF, make a decision. You know?
And Nigerian Football Federation have to make a decision on employing coaches. You talked about employment of coaches. It's not only in the female, for the female national team. In the past, we've seen especially in 2024, you know, the head coach of the Super Eagles of Nigeria, you know, lose his job or his contract wasn't renewed and he was foreign. And everyone expected that there'll be another appointment for a foreign coach, Austin Ogwavo, acting in an interim capacity. This is 2025. The African Cup of Nations for male category is in December. I remember very well in Morocco, will be in December, but qualifiers are in March. And so, are we going to continue with Austin Ogwavo, or like you mentioned, the Nigerian Football Federation must act now and get a coach? Either, you know, you name Austin Ogwavo, or you have a foreign coach that can get the job done, leading up to December, when the tournament will be in session. But first, we have to qualify. And by the way we are going, it looks like a qualification, just like in the World Cup as well. Our qualification looks doubtful.
Oh, yeah. I mean, to be honest, and I say this respectfully, I have given up on the World Cup, because for us to qualify now, we need to win every single game left, and then hope that others, you know, don't do the same thing. So at this point, I believe we have maybe a 20% chance of qualifying, and so at that point, if we qualify, I'll consider it a miracle. But like I said with the Super Falcons, the NFF have to make a decision. Do you want Austin Ogwavo to continue in this capacity and run through the qualifiers, or do you want to get another coach to come in on a permanent basis? And that decision has to be made before March. Make it and stand by it. You know, don't just leave Austin there as interim, because now, again, there's no great headspace for both the coach and the players. They don't know what to expect. Watch the game now. I've heard that two of the players who were Ismail Sadiq and I think another one, are now leaving for Europe, so they will not be eligible to play. And that's always the issue I have when we talk about getting home-based players into the Super Eagles. You know, every coach that has coached the Super Eagles, that has invited local players to the Super Eagles, has had to deal with the fact that they play 2-3 matches and then they're off to Europe. And then when they go, they take some time to adjust, and you can't even get them back to come and play even while they're, because it's not like they go there, they walk into the team, start making an impact, and then you can still get them back. So every time you invite a domestic league player to come to the national team, you know that the most...
This weekend and next weekend. But a lot of Nigerians giving up on Enyimba. Enyimba is not the same we knew of 2003 and 2004. And right now, Nigeria is running at the risk of losing her chance of having two teams, you know, represent us at the continental level because of our performances in the last few years. What is really responsible for our decline in African football? Like we mentioned, we had Enyimba 2 consecutive winners in 2003, 2004. But thereafter, we've not had any strong representation at the continent year in, year out. Now we are running at risk of not, you know, having our country represented by two teams at the both tiers of African football.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to coefficients. If you don't qualify for the group stages, you lose coefficient points. And so teams that actually qualify for that stage gain coefficient points. And so they catch up with you, they overtake you, and then you drop a spot until you can get it. And in fairness, that's a great metric to measure, you know, that, because our teams, I mean, I can't remember the last time our team made it to the group stage of these tournaments. And right now, we're, like you said, Enyimba now is actually struggling. And again, it comes down to, you know, the professionalism of running our teams. These clubs are not run professionally, you know. I mean, Enyimba right now have just sacked, first of all, we had Finidi at the start. Finidi went to the national team. They appointed Yama. Yama took over team, and he got fired. Now Stanley Eguma is there for this game. So there's no continuity. at all in those coaching ranks. And again, you also have players who are also playing with one eye on going to a different African country or going to Europe. So I think we need to get to the point where players feel comfortable enough to stay in this league until they get an offer that they just can't refuse before they go, just like we have in South Africa and North Africa. Otherwise, it's going to be hard. The North Africans are doing great at that. The East Africans like TP Mazembe and co are doing great at it. South Africans, of course, are awesome at that. So until we can get to that level in our league, it's going to be tough for us. And if we lose our spot, that makes it even harder.
Okay, I think that's the most you can take from around Africa. Let's quickly now go to Europe because we're running out of time. Colin, if you look at Africa, African players generally abroad, they seem to be making some kind of eye-catching representation. But in the past, we used to have Nigerian players who get it done. Only recently, there's Ademola, who was won the African Player of the Year, and of course helped his team Atlanta, beat that 66-year-old record in Italian football for Atlanta, winning the league. How do you rate African players, abroad? You are based in the United States of America, but I know you follow especially European football as well.
Well, look, I think we have sort of like, we had this great year where we had plateau top African player. We had a lot of African players at the very top, and then we kind of plateaued, and then now we're kind of like going down a little bit. We don't have that many anymore because right now, if you look at, you can call Mohamed Salah, you can call Ademola Lookman, maybe Achraf Hakimi, Victor Boniface. So we don't have that. We're not back in the day where you can name at the tip of your finger, almost like 15,
in the days
20,
of George Upon where
the Drogbas, the Kalous, the Torre, Yaya and Torre. So we don't have that same influence and impact anymore. But we still have a sizable number of African players who are doing the business abroad. So I think that it's a times and seasons kind of thing. We're still there, and I'm sure we're still going to get to that stage again.
Well, this is January. Everybody knows that January there's a window for teams to be fortified. Do you see African players on the move, or being in the mix of movement? Especially looking at a player like Victor Osimhen.
Yeah, I think Victor's move depends largely on what Napoli wants. Napoli have got all the they've got all the aces. They control his contract, and so if Victor is to move, then Napoli is going to have a large say on that. We've heard rumors of him going to Manchester United. I don't know how true that is, but I think a few players will move. But I don't think we'll have any significant move for an African player this window. Probably not until the summer.
You talk about Salah. Salah, we understand he's in his own words that this will be his last year, in playing for Liverpool FC. Can this see the light of the day? We understand that Liverpool dusting up the contract for him.
Yeah, everything's all about. It's all about the Benjamins, baby. So, but I think he will probably want to go on a high. Sadio Mane was there, he moved, and so I think that if Salah can lead Liverpool to the title.
Manchester in the blue end, they've never been in this kind of a position in the last 2 decades. Yes, they've been winning, but now they're struggling to at least stay within the European places. Talk about Manchester City. Then for Manchester United, I really can't remember in the last 3 decades when they have been out of the top 10. First half of the season. So what can we be traceable? What is happening to Manchester, both the blue end and the red end of Manchester?
I think with Man City, I think you've got to say they are probably a bit jaded. And when I say mentally jaded, because when you keep winning and winning, again, it's you're rising, you plateau, and then you kind of like start going down a little bit. They'll recover. They've got a great manager. They've got some great players in that team. So you're not going to keep them down for
their coach has already said that they are out of the title race. Do you agree with him?
No, when you're that far back, it's kind of hard. You've got to Liverpool have got to collapse cataclysmically for them to get into the title, and then Arsenal, of course. You have to depend on both Liverpool and Arsenal making some catastrophic collapse for them to get in the title race. So I think he's right there. But like I said, they probably have written off this season, and they're ambitious now. Probably limited to just making the Champions League at least or qualifying for Europe. But like I said, they've got some great players in the squad. They've got a great coach. They will definitely bounce back. It's a bit more complicated for Manchester United because then the issue is it comes all the way from the top. It's the leadership from the very top with the Glazers all the way down to the manager. And then you have coaches who are not motivated to do much beyond just, cashing a big paycheck. And that culture comes from the top. The Glazers don't care about football. They care about the revenues that come from Manchester. As long as the club is making money, people are buying tickets, are buying merchandise, are getting in there and turning those styles. And they're good with that. And so you can see in the less than a year that Ineos have come in, they have made significant changes on the football side. That's something the Glazers didn't care about. So because the leadership doesn't care so much about the football side, then it kind of permeates down all the way to the coaches and the players. And so United's problems are run much deeper.
Well, when you have Colin in the studio, you can run and run and run and run, but we have to begin to wrap up the show at this point in time. You talked about Arsenal. They've had, a lot of people say they are the nearly men of Premier League football. The last 2 seasons, they almost got it, were beaten to it by Manchester City. Liverpool this time around looks like a runaway with at least 6 points gap between them and Arsenal. This is midway the season in the Premier League. Do you see Arsenal, catching up, maybe better than what we've seen of them in the last 2 seasons?
To be honest, I don't trust Arsenal. Arsenal have made it a habit of choking away titles over and over and over again. And I don't think this season is going to be different. And to be fair, they are not the ones on top now, so we can't actually accuse them of choking. But I'm struggling to remember when Arsenal hunted down the title, the league leaders, and then actually won the title. I think the last time they did that was that season they won 1-0 with Wiltor scoring at Old Trafford, and even then they were I think they were neck and neck with Man United, and then that win kind of put them over the top. Beyond that, Arsenal have never really hunted down the league leaders and then overtook them and then gone on to win the league. So I really don't see them overtaking Liverpool. And then when they have been in front, like we saw last season, I think a couple of seasons back, when they've been in front, they've been almighty chokers. So I don't think Arsenal have what it takes to hunt down and overturn Liverpool. So they're going to finish as the bridesmaids again this year.
Wow, we have to wrap up the show, Ben, and you can always get the best from Colin. But Colin, you are here in Nigeria on holiday, but this weekend in the United States of America, there is Presidential Medal of Freedom being handed out to Magic Johnson and Lionel Messi, for their contribution, to sports, worldwide. The President Joe Biden of the United States of America will hand out this medal this weekend, to Magic Johnson. If you remember, you follow basketball as well. Magic Johnson, as a player of Los Angeles Lakers, won the NBA title 5 times, and it doesn't come easy. We don't have many players who have won the NBA title, 5 times. And for Lionel Messi, he's legendary around football. But first, let's look at Magic Johnson being among, I think, about 19 of them, athletes around the world, both in business, sports, and academics and other fields that are being honored there this weekend in the United States of America. Magic Johnson, no doubt, a legendary basketball player.
Yeah, not just legendary. He was a generational player. Magic Johnson, with the basketball in his hand, was poetry in motion. He could pass the ball in ways that many people could not. He could create space. He could do a lot of things with the basketball. I think he was. I was young, but Magic Johnson was the first major case of HIV infection that we heard about, and that scared the living daylights out of me back, I think it was maybe 20-something years ago. But he's come through that. He's lived through it, and he's contributed to the community. He's invested in business. Great basketball player. So I think it's a well-deserved honor, and he still continues to represent basketball in the most positive light. So I think it's a well-deserved honor for Magic Johnson.
Lionel Messi, 8 times Ballon d'Or winner, 8 times FIFA Best Player of the Year as well. Yeah. I'm not too sure anybody will have anything to say about this, but
Well,
Yes.
I mean, you've got to look at the award, the medal and thing, because usually it's given to American, I mean, Americans or people who live in America, for contributions to that, not so much as a global. Otherwise, see many people getting it. So Messi's getting it because he came to the MLS and he helped, raise the profile of the MLS. In all honesty, I would think that it's too short a time to give that medal to Messi. What he's done outside of the U.S. is outside of the U.S. What he's done in the U.S. hasn't been quite as seminal as the likes of Magic Johnson, Michael Jordan, or even LeBron James. So I do believe that I would have waited a bit more. Unfortunately, I mean, the person coming after, is not quite.
Colin is an American citizen now, and so if he says something about America and the level of contribution to his